And Media Row continues rolling. We're here with that guy, Tampa Bay Trevor Sikkema from PFF. And dude, first of all, it's so nice to see you in person. We do the Zoom, the virtual, whatever it is, but having you here in the flesh, seeing that majestic beard, it feels good, brother.
I appreciate you saying that, man. I was just saying to somebody the other day, they were like, oh, a lot of travel for you coming up because we do Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl as well. So now we're obviously here in Vegas for the Super Bowl. And they're like, are you nervous? And I was like, no, I'm excited. I get to see my friends basically just in this period of time, and I just get to see all my media friends. So it's great doing stuff with this with you.
It is, and especially for us, like selfishly, like we're at home, right? We get to sleep in our own beds every night, and it's been a blast. I know we're still so early in the week, but like, what have your impressions kind of been of Vegas and hosting this monstrosity that is the Super Bowl?
Yeah, obviously, Vegas is a city that is no stranger to hosting all sorts of big events. And so when I saw that it was there this year, this is actually my first time doing a Super Bowl media week in person. And so I don't have anything to go off of, but it's great. I mean, I love it. Like, obviously, the infrastructure is fantastic. You're walking around all the different casinos. You're seeing all your buddies, everything. No shortage of places to eat. Super spacious, beautiful area here in Mandalay Bay. So, I mean, it's been a fantastic experience so far.
And I always tell a bunch of people, too, like, Vegas is built to do these kinds of events.
100%.
Right? Like, you look at like, Vegas, what is your thing? And it's putting on events. It's doing it at a very high level and having really the eyes of the sporting world on this place. So it's a lot of fun.
Yep.
Speaking of a lot of fun, though, we are now in one of my favorite seasons. We are in mock draft season.
Yes.
And we look at your most recent mock, and I'll couch by saying that I'm pretty sure you did this mock before Antonio Pierce was hired officially, so I want to get back to that in just a sec. But you had the Raiders going defensive in round one, which I think is an interesting play. I think that a lot of fans will be excited about that and the beauty of the mock draft. A lot of discourse. Who did you have the Raiders taking at 13, and kind of what was your thought process behind that?
Yeah, so for that mock draft, I had them taking Clemson cornerback Nate Wiggins, who, man, I know Raiders fans have kind of gone back and forth with a handful of them over the last month or so as they've really turned the page into draft season. And they talk about corner being a big need for this team, and it's a really good year to need a corner, especially at the top, especially where they're picking. 13, okay, maybe they don't get the first corner off the board, but we've got 4 or 5 corners in this class who could all be starters in year one, I think. And so you don't even have to get the very first guy in this class. And I can't remember if Wiggins ended up being CB1 or CB2 in that mock draft that I did, but man, he is such a fiery competitor. There are a couple of reps where you could just tell. He went up against Keon Coleman, which was one of the best wide receivers in college football this past year at Florida State. And you could tell that before the game, he must have gone to coaches and was like, give me Keon as much as possible. He's got that kind of an attitude, that kind of a mentality. Long at 6'2", can give you that press coverage type of length to be able to play man coverage close. But I think he's smart in zone as well. He's got great recovery speed. And there were a couple of reps this year where an interception happened or a fumble, ball's going the other way, and you just see this dude fly off the screen, high-effort player, and there's one where he ends up making a tackle and I believe forcing a fumble right before this guy even gets to the goal line. It's just, that's the kind of effort that on top of the really good coverage ability, you point to those and go, give me that type of a football player. And to play corner, you've got to be a fiery competitor as a prerequisite. That is something that is non-negotiable, and Nate Wiggins has a lot of that.
I think what's exciting, too, for this fan base is they've waited so long to have a good defense. They've waited so long. And I think, candidly, going into last year, if you would have told the fan, like, hey, you're going to have a middle-of-the-road defense, they would have been jumping for joy. They would have been like, oh, my God, I can't believe it. And at the end of the year, I mean, this defense, and granted, I do wear my silver and black-colored glasses, Trevor, but, like, this defense was playing a really solid brand of football. So to add another explosive, to your point, an explosive playmaker, a guy who can be versatile in Patrick Graham's scheme, it makes a lot of sense for the silver and black.
Yeah, and getting back to your point, just the overall defensive culture of this team, I think, took a step in the right direction when Antonio Pierce had a bigger voice. And now moving forward, he's going to be the head coach. Obviously, like, everything that he did in the defensive side of the ball with him in his playing days, like, that's something that means a lot to specifically defensive players. I think it means a lot to the whole locker room when you have a guy who's been in your shoes and has gone through that blood, sweat, and tears. Not that you have to. There's plenty of good coaches that didn't play nearly as long or maybe didn't play at all at that level, but there is something special, especially something motivating when the guy who's on the headset has also been in the trenches where you're at. And so I think it's no shock that the defense continued to play well as the season went on, even when you look at the Raiders and there's always something to play for, right? I think even when the record isn't exactly what you want it to be, individual pride comes into play, future contracts, those kinds of things. And so these guys never give up. But for them to continue to get better, continue for them to play with a passion, I think means that you got the right guy in charge calling things for them.
I think for us as fans too, Trevor, I think what was great is to see when AP came in that there was an unquestioned kind of, the vibe shift, yes, but it was like we knew who the Raiders were going to be, right? They wanted to be stout defensively.
Yep.
They wanted to run the ball. They wanted to give their quarterback, Aiden O'Connell, a little opportunity to work off the play action. But it was very clear from day one what they were going to be about, who they wanted to be. And when they found success, especially from November 1 on, they followed that formula to a T. So I think if you're able to go into 2024, make a good defense even better, now you're cooking with the ass a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and what you mentioned is so important. And there are some parts of this game that get more complicated than they need to be. But knowing who you are and having that identity being a steady force for you as the season goes on, because it's never going to be perfect, but you can't really change who you are, right? You've got to be able to go into the season, and adjustments are one thing, but who you are as a defense, the players that you draft, the schemes that you put in place before the season starts, all of that stuff has to go into an identity. And when you know who you are and you're not fickle about that, that's something that makes it easy for players to buy in and continue to want to get better, to continue to think, okay, this is the week where it really all turns around for us. So I do agree with you there. I think that's a really important point that a lot of people don't think about, and I think that is a good quality characteristic of AP.
We were talking to Albert Breer yesterday, and he brought up a good point where he was like, there's so much focus on the quarterback, right? Not only with the Raiders this year, but just in general.
Of
and he
course,
goes
right.
Especially a new regime, you got Tom Telesco, AP now here in a permanent status. He goes, you just got to be careful about finding your guy and not saying, hey, I need to get a guy. You have to find the guy. And he's like, you go into the calculus of what would it take to move from 13 to 4 or 13 to 6, whatever it may be. But I'm kind of curious, just from your perspective, when you look at that kind of second tier of quarterbacks, obviously Caleb and Drake May and Jaden Daniels are going to, go where they go. But when you look at that second tier, the Bo Nixes of the world, the Michael Penix Juniors of the world, what kind of stands out to you from that group of guys?
I like those two guys. I really do. I think that we're in a situation where we could have 5, maybe 6 quarterbacks go in the first round. It all kind of depends on what happens in free agency. But you look at free agency, and there's not a lot of surefire starting quarterbacks that are going to be out there. So we'll have to see kind of how those chips fall. But I really do think that we've got talent in this quarterback group for 2024 where that many guys could go in the first round. And I get to see Bo Nix and Michael Penix up close not too long ago when we were in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. And sure, neither of those guys really grabbed that QB1 for the week, title by the reins. There were still really great moments from those players. And I think when you look back at their bigger body of work, the higher volume reps and statistics from them, especially over this past year, really good football players. I mean, Michael Penix, I know the throwing motion, it's a little unorthodox. The footwork's not always exactly the way that it needs to be, but this dude's got a rocket of an arm, and he is a big game thrower, man.
I saw it at the Pac-12 championship here.
I saw it. Okay, I wasn't gonna bring it up, but look, and that is what Michael Penix does at his best. And I think he's got that kind of a mentality to him. Look, people talk about the age with both of these guys. You got quarterbacks today playing at 37, 38, 39, playing fantastic football. You don't even have to go into the Tom Brady 40-plus category to know that, okay, so what? They're a little bit older. If you nail it at quarterback, you're getting these guys for 2 contracts anyways. That's well into their mid-30s. That's plenty of time. So I think that the age thing is overblown with each of them. I think Penix gives you, without question, NFL-level arm talent. I think Nix does as well. But, man, what I saw from him over the past year of the weapon that he was, not just with his arm, but with his leg as well. You want to get more RPO things into it, which Luke Getsy might want to do as the offense coordinator. Sure, Nix's average depth of target was a little bit lower because of Oregon's scheme, but you saw plenty of times. I mean, people talk about Troy Franklin, his wide receiver, as one of the better intermediate and deep threat wide receivers of this class. Who's throwing him the football? Nix is. And so when you see a lot of those beautiful Troy Franklin plays, you can't discount the guy that's facilitating him the football. And so both of those guys, I think, would be worthy first-round investments, and that is still the range that I think that those two guys could go in.
Granted, I'm a Pac-12 guy. Rest in peace. I'm not going to pretend to to not be a Pac-12 guy, but like
Gone too soon.
I know.
Gone too soon.
One thing that I really appreciate about the quarterbacks in particular is that both Nix and Penix are guys that have done it for more than a season, right? And I feel like we have to place value on guys that can do it for more than 6 months at a time.
Yes.
When you're going through your evaluation process, like if you're a guy like Penix who's had ups and who's had downs, or a guy like Bo who's been in college for 19 seasons, right? Like, how do you kind of mix that calculus of like, yeah, he's been doing it for a long time, but he's been doing it at like, I'm kind of just curious what factor the experience plays in all that.
I mean, it's kind of different depending on who you're talking about, and experience is often tricky. We like guys with experience,
But not too much.
but then we don't like
Yeah.
older prospects. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And it's like, man, I think we overblow it a little bit here. Okay, for running back, I think age is more of an issue, because if you are a good running back and you're not coming into the league until you're, let's say, 23, 24, you've probably been playing running back a long time. The same can be said with linebacker. These are two of the more physical positions in the game. So because of that, you have a lot more wear and tear on your body just playing a very physical position. So when you get to the league and you're 24, if your rookie contract is up and you're 28, 29, that's probably about it. Whereas if you're drafting a running back and they're 20, okay, maybe you could realistically get 2 contracts out of them, and you could kind of increase that value and that longevity. But when it comes to quarterback, they're not taking a lot of wear and tear on their body.
Especially now, too. You can't touch the quarterback.
And experience is so important. You know, at PFF, we have a lot of different metrics, a lot of different data points, and the most important thing for us to remember when we are going over this and we try to explain to everybody is large sample sizes are really important. You know, yes, there's something valuable to, let's look at Jaden Daniels, right? And he had elite rushing grades, elite passing grades this past year. But it's 1 year where he's been an elite player. So you have to kind of go into it and say, I mean, he graded out very, very well, but it's not like a large sample size of grading out really well. Nix, the last 2 years, has been one of the most, cautious, and I say that as like a compliment. Like, his turnover-worthy play rate has been one of the lowest in college football. His play under pressure has only gotten better over the last 2 years. And so now you're having larger sample sizes to point to say, okay, the Auburn days that everybody complains about, they feel like a thing of the past. It feels like he really transferred and became like a new Bo. And I think the same was there with Michael Penix as well. It's helped with Michael Penix that he's been healthy the last 2 years. He's been able to showcase his talent that he had all along. Because, I mean, my first exposure to Michael Penix was actually when he was at Indiana, that Ohio State game where he went into the horseshoe and we went, hold up, is Ohio State about to get beat by this quarterback here at Indiana? And it ends up being Michael Penix, and we see that, fast forward a couple of years, what he was able to do with Washington. And so, look, to me, especially from the quarterback position, I'd rather you have experience. I'd rather you be able to hit the ground running, especially if you're a first-round pick. And so that's kind of the way that I kind of look at some of these older prospects when it comes to QBs. It just does not bother me, especially if you've been able to string together multiple years of showing that you are this type of a player.
And I'm with you, man. I like the consistency. I like a guy who, like I said, has been able to do it for more than 6 months at a time. But, Trevor, before we get you out of here, give me like a day 3 guy that you like. Give me someone that you're like, this is a dude. Like, this is a guy who's going to he's going to make an NFL roster. He's going to be a day 3 guy, but he's going to end up contributing in some way, shape, or form in 2024.
Man, so I'll give you a Shrine Bowl guy, and yes. I don't know if he's going to be a day 3 guy at this point because he played so well, but Christian Boyd from Northern Iowa, their defensive tackle there, he's had back-to-back years where he's graded really, really well for us. Comes in at the Shrine Bowl, measures in about 6'2", 320 pounds, so a little bigger than what he was listed at, but also a little bit shorter than what he was listed at. He was unblockable. He was completely unblockable. And Northern Iowa doesn't get a lot of NFL draft love very often. And so for that, I think that he was probably viewed as this more like, maybe mid-day 3 player, but he played so well. He might be working his way into that like late day 2 range. But he is just somebody who, when you talk about like a sleeper, somebody who people don't really know very well, and I'm just saying the Raiders could maybe be taking an interior defensive lineman at some point in the draft. This guy's somebody to watch out for as somebody who is truly unblockable, it felt like, for every one-on-one he was up against.
I love that. And that's the best part of draft season, right? You get to find these little, hidden gems, these guys from Northern Iowa, that's from southwestern state, and that's what we love having you on for. But before we let you go, where can the people find you? I know you guys are crushing the content over at PFF. I know you're really, really busy this week. Where can everyone find you, Trevor?
Yeah, PFF.com. We're updating big board that we have there, the mock draft simulator for everybody out there that wants to run their own mock drafts. You can do that over at pff.com. We're running a sale right now, actually, if you want the full unlocked at mock draft simulator experience, 30 MDS, it'll get you 30% off there. And then we got an NFL draft podcast as well, myself and Connor Rogers, NFL Stock Exchange. So anybody out there really wants to dive deep into this class and different strengths and weaknesses of a lot of the positions, and of course the mock drafts for all the Raiders fans out there, come check us out over at the NFL Stock Exchange on YouTube.
Yes. I would encourage everyone go hang out with Trevor and his friends. They do a fantastic job. We're gonna have to catch up with you later on in draft season.
Absolutely, man.
Unfortunately, that probably won't be in person, so we got to treasure these moments. It's so good to have you here in person. But hey, man, seriously, best of luck. Congrats on all the success. We'll talk to you soon. Okay?
I appreciate it, man. Anytime.